If having a literature degree has taught me two things in life, then it's that unemployment is super fun, and that if you dig deep enough into any story, you will 100% find Heart of Darkness somewhere along your path. So let's sit together around the campfire and look at this legendary novella for one last time. Max Payne 3 is the third and most probably the final installment in the Max Payne series. And it's coincidentally the only Max Payne game I've ever played. Yes, that is pure blasphemy on my side. But in addition to that, jumping straight into the very last part of a game series is extremely confusing. It is good then that confusion is one of the central themes of Max Payne 3. Everything in this story is about a man who is lost in the world he doesn't understand anymore. He is surrounded by people whose speech is incomprehensible to him, he has no idea what is he even doing, and absolutely nothing makes even a little bit of sense no more. The story of Max in Max Payne 3 is one of the slow but inevitable descent of an old broken man into the pit of insanity, which is filled with betrayal, revenge, and most of all with the pure darkness of human hearts. The central theme, which is baked into the whole narrative of Heart of Darkness, is the savageness which can be found inside every single person on this planet. No matter if you are from the prestigious imperialistic Britain or the colonized and desolated banks of Congo River, you still bear the essence of darkness deep within your soul. You can't really get rid of it as well. Even if you put on a pretty suit and tell yourself how you are a civilized, better person, then all you do is hide behind the facade of lies you so desperately want to be true. But those are just pretty pointless lies. If put under the right amount of pressure, at the right moment of time, anyone can succumb to the ancient impulses which call us from within. We are animals who are born for violence and who can do truly horrible things without even batting an eye. Max took a job he never wanted, in a country he knew nothing about, for the people he despised, not because he really believed that it was a path to a better life. No, he wanted to destroy himself, drown in a sea of painkillers mixed with alcohol, and just disappear in the void of self-hatred. It would be wrong to say that he got tricked into going on the path of destruction and wickedness. It's more that he willingly threw himself on it without any desire or hope of getting away from it alive. From the get-go, all this journey into the abyss of human trafficking and Brazilian poverty was nothing more than a glorified suicide attempt. Apocalypse Now, which is also known as the superior film adaptation of Heart of Darkness, starts with its traumatized, borderline unhinged protagonist being given a mission. A simple mission of getting the discharged officer back from the enemy territory where he has gone completely mad and created a cult-like phenomena around himself. But the path to this officer is not a straightforward A to B journey. It is rather a sequence of independent, mad in their own unique ways, stories. This is also known as the fragmented narration. Instead of a story being presented in a linear and logical fashion, we are given a set of very descriptive and extremely vivid scenes, which are not necessarily even connected. We are thrashed with these scenes and forced to create our own connections between them in order to understand the story which unfolds in front of our eyes. You can look at it as a book that misses some of its pages and ones which are still present are mixed up. Alternatively, you can imagine it as a set of video game levels that barely have any story connection between themselves and which randomly throw us to the end, or the middle, or the very start of the story whenever they desire. Each one of those levels are disconnected from the previous ones, and the only linking connection which holds this mess together is the characters, which stay the same throughout the entire film. But saying that the characters stay the same would also be a blatant lie, because they don't. Well, physically perhaps, however even that's not entirely true. But in addition to that, every single fragment through which they relentlessly persevere affects them and twists the most fundamental pillars of their personalities. What looked like a relatively normal person at the start is something out of the horror tales by the time we get to see that ending. And what is ultimately true for every Heart of Darkness story is how anticlimactic the final moments are. In the original story, the man who has been glorified and feared by everyone whom you've met before, the one who was basically a god in this lands of violence and human brutality, turns out to be a weak old man on his deathbed. In the Vietnam War version of the same story, he turns out to be a much more charismatic and capable man. However, in the end, there is nothing extraordinary and strange about him anymore. All the mysteries and godlike imagery is gone by the time we finally lay our eyes on him. After all those strange and inhumane and barbaric places our hero has been through, he doesn't seem that different from this clearly unhinged and traumatized character who had no choice but to lose the last remnants of humanity just to survive this place, which is impossible to comprehend by those who are still living high above the dirt and disgust in the skyscrapers of civilization. Max starts his journey at the very top. Literally, he looks at the desolated and ever-present favelas from the eagle-eyes height of the most expensive and lucrative buildings that Brazil has ever created. But from the moment he steps into this place of luxury and unthinkable riches, he has nowhere else to go but down. And down he goes, down to the very streets of famine and desolation, and even lower than that. Much lower, actually. By the time we are done with this story of pointless killing and plain greed, all we see is the world in flames. Everything we knew, Max knew, is gone. It's destroyed, burned, buried under the tons of matter and concrete, or thousands of miles away in the place which seems like a long-gone ghost of the past now. Max has gained absolutely nothing from this story. Everything he did was ultimately pointless. The people he was paid to protect all died. He saw the worst of humanity just to understand how powerless he is to change anything, and he learned nothing from all this mess. We've learned nothing from it as well, because at the end of the day we don't need a story about the journey into the heart of the Congo River, or into the brutality of the Vietnam War, or into the corrupt society of Brazil. We can't learn nothing from all these stories. They can't tell us anything that we already don't see in the world which surrounds us. What every Heart of Darkness story has in common is that all of them are set somewhere in a far distant land, which exists outside of what we know as the civilized world. It is implied that even if we see the worst of humanity, we can still go back to the comfort and normality of our safe and moral world. But that's our lie, isn't it? We don't need stories of far distant places drowning in madness and savageness. We can see the same savageness happening in the same places we call cultured and civilized. There is pointless, ugly violence happening footsteps from where we reside, horrible inequalities which destroy lives of entire generations, rich who feast on the backs of those who can barely afford living, corruption of entire systems that were supposed to protect us, senseless death for nothing, and more. Much more actually. Because darkness does not exist somewhere on the outskirts of our maps. It comes with us wherever we go. It is an inseparable part of us. But here behind the walls of our education and affluence, we can afford to ignore it. To turn a blind eye on the horrors which exist just outside our front doors. If we pretend that it doesn't happen here in our own homes, then perhaps it will just disappear. Out of sight, out of mind. Isn't that what they say? But the thing about this ancient and great darkness that we carry deep inside our hearts is that it won't just go away. It will stay here, with us till the end of times. And the longer we ignore it, the longer we pretend that it doesn't exist, and that we are better than those poor savages, the more it grows. Like a tumor, it slowly destroys us from the inside, until there is nothing left but an empty husk of what once was a person. Isn't it fascinating how every character in Heart of Darkness accepts the madness around like it's nothing extraordinary? They are oblivious to the insanities they are doing. In their minds, the darkness exists somewhere far away, and they would certainly recognize it if it would come knocking on their doors. And that's because the longer you live in madness, the more normal it seems. And then, before you even realize it, you already gave up everything you've ever dreamt of and became the horrors you've despised all this time.